Welcome to Smart Branding, a podcast dedicated to branding, naming, and domain names. I'm Tatiana Bonneau, and with my guests, we try to help you create and grow strong, memorable, and meaningful brands online. I believe time is one of our most precious assets, and so I want to thank you in advance if you decide to spend the next 30 minutes with us. I promise to do my best to make those worth it. Let's go! My guest today is Jaci Russo. She's a brand strategist with 25 years plus of experience, founder of brandRUSSO, author, speaker, and more. We're going to talk about all of that. Thank you for joining us, Jaci. Wonderful having you with us here.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's start with a bit of a background. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you get to found brandRUSSO?
Sure. I grew up in Louisiana, and after my time in college here, I moved to Los Angeles, worked for Creative Artist Agency, which is a crazy first job out of college. I mean, I was working with, A-list actors and actresses, and it was kind of mind blowing. And I left there after a couple of years and went to start a production company with two clients. And I did product development and marketing. We produced a couple of feature films, Virtuosity and Hideaway were the two biggest ones. I did some product development with a former client at CAA, Mimi Rogers, who was the first Mrs. Tom Cruise. We developed a product called the Stretch and Flex, took that onto Home Shopping Network, sold a bunch of units, got kind of on their radar, and then was hired to come in and work directly with Barry Diller, who at the time was buying HSN and Ticketmaster and USA Networks and a bunch of other companies. Worked there. So this is basically most of the 90s. And then it was time to move back to Louisiana. And in 2001, started brandRUSSO.
Great. That's quite a career there. How did you come up with the name brandRUSSO? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, it's like the eighth name, because when we started, I was a media buyer. That was the whole thing. I'd gotten married. I'd had a baby. I was pregnant with the second baby. I had run out of paid time off at my job. I was a regional marketing director, and it was like, I have to have time off to have this baby. Like, that's crazy. What do you mean I don't have any time off? I took 3 days off for the first one.
Oh my God.
Scheduled deliver on a Wednesday so that I could be back at office on the Monday.
Yeah.
3 days. So, it's crazy. So I was like, I can't do that again. That's ridiculous. And my father-in-law, we were at lunch at their house one Sunday, and he said, why don't you go on your own? I said, well, with what talent? My husband's a graphic designer. He's very talented. I know a lot of freelance graphic designers, but I'm a freelance marketing director. Like, I don't. And then I was like, well, hold on. I'm a licensed media buyer. I've been certified for years. I could do freelance media buying. Well, maybe there's something to that idea. And so I waddled, 8 months pregnant, into a couple of companies locally who were just doing a horrible job with their advertising, and they hired me. And so I thought, okay, well, this is good. So I had enough business to quit my day job. And so I was really just a freelance media buyer. And so the name was OEJ Media because my college debate partner, Oliver, and one of my best friends, Elizabeth, and then Jackie, OEJ. And really, it was shorthand for One-Eyed Jack. Our son, Jackson, the firstborn, really didn't sleep for like the first 24 hours. He had one eye open the whole time, looking around, checking things out. So we called him One-Eyed Jack. And so it was named after that. So it was OEJ Media was our first name. And then that was kind of weird because we weren't just media. After 6 months, our media clients had needs for TV ads or radio ads or newspaper ads or billboards or whatever. And so Michael was working two jobs. My husband, he was a graphic designer all day for one ad agency. And then he was doing work for my clients all night. And he's like, listen, you have more work than the 10-person ad agency that I work for. Can I quit and just do this full time? Because that's a lot trying to do two things. I'm like, yeah, sure. So he did. And so at this point, we're 6 months old. So OEJ Media doesn't make any sense anymore. So it was just OEJ Marketing. And then we started hiring employees and we started growing. And I kept trying to explain what the OEJ was. That was just weird. So it became the Russo Group. And so we were the Russo Group for years. But then nobody knew. Group of what? A group of attorneys? A group of accountants? What are we a group of? A group of troublemakers? And so I was like, okay, hold on. We're a branding agency. That's what we're doing predominantly, strategic brand plans and implementing those plans for our clients. So we need to have brand in the name. People ask, when we were OEJ, somebody would say, well, you need to go ask for the Russos. and they didn't make the connection with OEJ. So I didn't want it to be a name that's too brand specific, what we do. It needed to be a little bit Russo specific, who we are. And so brandRUSSO kind of came out of that, and we could buy the domain name, which is important. And so we've been brandRUSSO ever since. So really it's been, I think 15 years now that we've been brandRUSSO.
It's really wonderful. That whole path you just described. I think it's two things. One, it's what happens to a lot of startups, and I experienced that in my line of work, like literally the issues you mentioned where people launch a business and there's like one service or one product or one idea even that grows, that changes in time. People come and go. Sometimes it's related to names of people in the company and they're no more there, or it becomes limiting for one reason or another, whether it's geographically limiting or limiting them to a service or a product. And then, as you mentioned, there's the audience and how do they get and react to the name. And I find that really great that you didn't have a problem going with that flow and changing it and listening to that feedback that you were getting, from your customers and your team and those feelings you had yourself, as opposed to just saying, no, that's what we are and we're staying like that.
I think that, I get asked when I get interviewed at podcasts or when I speak at conferences, I get asked, what's the secret to your success? I'm like, well, first of all, I don't know if I'm successful yet. I mean, we're getting by, we're doing fine, but there's always a bigger goal. I'm always working towards something else. But I would say, if anything, that I was attribute to how we've been able to stay in business for 24 years and continue to grow, it's adaptability. If you can't adapt, you're going to die. And so when I think about how we've adapted over the years, so, it started with, it was just me working out of the house with a baby in my belly and another one in a car seat at my feet. And then we got so busy, so I had to hire people. So I had to adapt to figure out what that looked like and develop processes for that. And then we outgrew the office we were in. So we bought a building in downtown Lafayette, which is the building we've been in since 2005. So it's 8,500 square foot space. So we had to adapt to that. And then I think about, the company was 6 months old when 9/11 happened. And we had clients who just went out of business. Like they just couldn't survive the change that forced on them. And then the financial crisis, there was an oil and gas crisis because we're in an area that's very oil and gas predominant. That's not our client base, but it affects everything around us. And then I think about, stock market crash, and I think about COVID. Every one of those is a place where business can end. And so how are you going to adapt? And then in our own industry, I was a media buyer in TV, radio, newspaper, and billboard. Do you know what I have not done in 10 years? Bought TV, radio, newspaper, billboard. That's not the world we're in anymore. I mean, we still do a little bit because some of our clients are in a market where it makes sense. But most of our clients, it's all digital. It's all online. And so how do we adapt to that? When social media came along, Michael, the aforementioned partner, graphic designer, husband, very opposite from me, personality type, said, this social media thing is not going to last, right? I mean, it's dumb. I was like, well, I'm being paid to fly around the country and teach companies how to use it in their business. So yeah, I kind of think it's going to stick around. And so I developed courses on how parents can protect their kids on social media, how schools need to use social protection, how companies can leverage it, how they need to encourage their employees to be a part of it, not just block the Wi-Fi signal, which some companies try to do, which is a bad idea. And so adapt. If we don't adapt, we're not going to make it. So I thank you for acknowledging that and commenting on like just the name part. That to me just represents how we've adapted and we've changed the name to reflect who we've become. Now, I don't think people should change their company names willy-nilly, and you can't just do it every couple of years. But as you grow and evolve, you need to rise up and meet who you're growing and evolving into. And so sometimes that is a logo change or a name change or a location change to a new building or, a launch of a new department and hiring of a new team of talent that can match that. We have to adapt.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that was, is it Darwin who said that it's not about survival of the strongest, but the ones who can best adapt to change? Sounds like something that he would say.
Yes,
yeah.
100% yes.
Yeah. So definitely. So you just touched on the fact that billboard and TV advertising and radio, even though we get in the car, we put on the radio. Sometimes I still hear all the time too much advertising, even if you ask me. So that does exist. People do pay for it. I don't know how much of it is because it's the done thing. And it's I don't know how they measure its effectiveness, but it does still exist, like you mentioned, but definitely not to the extent that it used to. So how have you seen in those 25 plus years that change, how businesses, how brands advertise themselves, and how should they?
So every time you say 25 plus years, and I know that's written in my bio, like we sent it to you, but I think I'm only 30. How is that possible? Because I don't feel old enough to have had a career for 25 years. It's technically accurate, but it still feels weird. So there's a lot of things to the answer to that question. First of all, I think it's important to realize that on average, we encounter 8,000 ads a day on average. So you are surrounded by it. There's no escaping it. Our brains have developed filters that help protect us from most of those 8,000 ads. So we're actually not absorbing even 10% of the ads we see. When you drive past the same billboard every day, you become blind to it. When you see an ad on TV, if you're watching, regular straight up live TV, or you don't pay for the Hulu no ads, you'll just start to tune those ads out because they're not applicable to you. And so that's that. It's the RAS. That's the part of the brain that's protecting us because we can't absorb all that information. The things that cut through the clutter are our fight or flight instinct. So it doesn't matter how preoccupied you are. If there's something that happens, glass breaking in the other room, like somebody's breaking into the house, that's going to cut through the clutter, right? That it's going to activate your fight or flight instinct. So that will cut through. If someone says the word sex, even across the room, your ears will perk up. Oh, I'm going to listen to this conversation. What are they talking about over there? If somebody says your name. So there are little things that will cut through. Or if it's directly,
in that order?
Not necessarily in that order, but maybe close to that order. And then if it's directly relevant to you. So I go back to, I had a baby, started the company, had a baby. So I had 4 babies in 5 years. And so there was a half a decade where I was just really pregnant the whole time, like just for 5 years straight. I was pregnant.
We have some similarities. I have 4 kids as well, and actually, my husband. And my husband has that running joke like, "It's been a long time you haven't been pregnant." I was like, "Shut up! I don't want to talk about."
We're gonna keep it that way for a little bit longer. What ages are your kids?
19 in 2 days, the eldest. The other ones are 14, 12, and 8.
Okay. Oh, it's a spread.
Yeah.
That's quite a spread. Okay. So mine are 23, 22, 21, and 19.
Oh, cool. So they're like one after the other.
Yeah. So literally 4 kids in 4 years. Absolutely. The oldest had turned 4, and then I had the youngest. That's crazy. So during that time, and so you spread yours out smartly a little bit better. I know during that time for me, I saw pregnancy gear and baby equipment. And it's like everybody was having babies. It appears to me, contrary to what you just said, that no one has had babies in 19 years because I haven't seen pregnant people. I haven't seen ads for pregnant things. Now, does that mean that no one's running those ads? No, of course they are. But it wasn't relevant to me. So it didn't get through my filter, and I didn't notice it because it didn't matter. And so advertising is a little bit about knowing really who your target audience is, what they need, what they want, how they think about themselves, how they think about their challenges, how they think about your industry and your products and your competitors. It's a little bit about knowing how you're different. So what is it that makes you special? Why should they pick you? There's got to be a reason why you're the right choice. If you're going to make me change, you got to give me a good reason to change. It's a little bit about knowing the messaging that you're going to put out there, using the clients, the customers' language, because we all use industry terminology that matters to only people in our own industry. So what terminology do they use? Because those are the words that are going to matter. And then putting those messages in the right place enough times that they're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting until I need you. then I will notice you. Then I'll think my phone is listening to me because I just said that and now I saw the ad. No, you said that, it opened the filter and you saw the ad. That ad's been there the whole time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna get back to that, but before I forget that question, you did mention a few times the graphic designer, business partner, husband.
Yes,
that is not a very common thing where people work with their husband, wife, family in general. So how is that working out for you?
Well, we're still doing it. We've been married 25 years and we've worked together 23 years. So knock wood, so far, so good. It's a challenge. There are times when it is really difficult. Michael and I went to the same college, but we did not know each other in college. We had a mutual best friend. I was in the sorority with her and he was in show choir with her. Her name's Melissa. And so after college, I'm in Los Angeles. Melissa moves to Seattle. Michael moves to Seattle, platonic. They're friends. She helps him get established. I move home from Los Angeles. He moves home from Seattle 1 week apart. Still don't know each other. Just coincidence. I go work for one ad agency. He goes to work for another ad agency. We meet at an ad-fed Christmas party. So it's like a bunch of ad agencies together in one room. And you're kind of familiar. Like, are you friends with Melissa? Yeah. So, we've heard her talk about each of us to the other. I need a date for a Mardi Gras ball in January. Melissa comes home for Christmas. You should ask my buddy, Michael. Like, maybe. I don't know. I don't know your buddy. No, listen, he knows how to dance. He owns his own tuxedo. And I know he'll say yes. I was like, done. I will date your friend, Michael. So called him. I was like, hey, do you want to go to this Mardi Gras ball with me? He says, yes. We go to the ball. So that's January. In April, we're engaged. In October, we're married. In November, we find out that we're pregnant from our honeymoon. And our first Christmas together is our first Christmas together. So, and then, we have the baby in the next August. And then we get pregnant the next year. And then we start the agency. So it was boom, boom, boom. One of the things that I think has made it work for us is clearly defined roles. Who's in charge of what? We can't both be in charge of everything. And somebody has to be in charge of everything. So we have to have clearly defined roles. I'm an okay cook, but I'm not good at it. I don't enjoy it. We're going to have the same 5 things over and over again because that's what I know how to make. He loves it and he's really good at it. And he's Italian. And so he's always inventing things. He's the guy who can stand in the pantry and see a bunch of random stuff and put it together for this amazing meal. And I'm like, where'd you get the recipe? What do you mean recipe? I just grabbed it out of the pantry and made it. I was like, no, that's weird, man. People don't just do that. That's a talent.
No, the thing is, I do that, but it doesn't work. Like,
it works when he does it. You'll have to come over. He makes pasta that will make you so happy. So happy.
My husband is French and he does the cooking in the house. So I think I know kind of what you mean. When I say I'm going to make the dinner, the kids are like, Mom, can we order pizza? So
there you go.
That's no.
Yeah. I make 2 things that my kids will tolerate and like, and then everything else Michael makes. And so now when I met Michael, he had, like $2.50 in his bank account because he's a graphic designer. He's an artist. It's money. So I'm in charge of that. So we just each have our own skill set. And at the office, it's the same thing. It's a divide and conquer. I'm a strategist. So I'm always thinking about the strategy, the research, the plan. How do we make this work? How do we track it to make sure it worked? He's a creative. He's a writer. He's a graphic designer. And so, I'm pointing like the side of the building where his team is. So he oversees that whole team of creatives. I oversee this team of strategists. And he and I don't talk very much during the day, which is probably why we're able to still work together and be married. And so, every time we hire a person, I'm like, good, that's another block between the 2 of us. I'll tell that person, they'll tell somebody who tells somebody who tells somebody who'll tell you. And so, that's how it works for us.
It sounds absolutely wonderful. Yeah. I think
it has its moments.
I'm sure it does. But then, so it does in everything. I think it's important to sort of be realistic and be honest about it. And that's kind of how things work.
For sure.
It definitely doesn't work for everyone. I've seen, both type of stories. I think honesty is the most important thing. If you figure out that it doesn't work with, either it's the work side or the personal side, be open about it and decide what's more important, I guess.
Right. Well, and I would add to that, there were definitely times along the path where it wasn't working on the personal side. And I mean, we made a commitment, and I'm honoring that commitment. We've got these 4 kids. And so, I'm not changing anything, but there were times when I thought about it, I considered like, what are the options? How do I get out of this? But we're also working together. And so, so I'm going to blow up my entire life. And there were times when it didn't work as well professionally. There were some frustrations. We had to really figure out how to help Michael understand deadlines. And so, there's some challenges there. But so what am I going to do? Fire him? Yeah. So, so it's about, so we're in this commitment and we're locked in. So how do we make it work? And I think sometimes it's easier to say, oh, well, I'm just going to chuck it and start again. And sometimes that's necessary. But in our situation, being connected in both places meant we worked really hard to make it work.
I think that's a great point. And it reminds me, very weirdly, but there is a connection there. It reminds me of an article I read some time ago, and it was an interview with a couple that was old couple from India, and they had an arranged marriage. That's, they used to, I think it's still done.
Oh, they still do. Sure.
Yeah. And I was like, I started reading with that very negative, that's horrible. And I still think that shouldn't be the case. Like, you shouldn't arrange how people marry. But what it did make me think about reading that and what they said, it was like, when you are with this person and that's it, that's going to be it. That's going to be my partner for life. You make it work. You both work very hard on making that work, and, the respects and I'm sure that's not, all the cases, but it made me think that the reality of that, of knowing that's going to be it, and people make it work, people put effort in. And when it's not the case, when you don't feel and more like we are a lot more free, both, financially, geographically, whatever you want now, and we take that for granted, and we see that as if we don't have to work for it. Like, happiness is just there. We meet and boom, it's great, and we don't have to put effort in. And it's actually not the case. You have to put effort in. Like, even if you're absolutely crazy in love with somebody, it's an ongoing thing. And same in business. You can have a great idea. You still have to work at it, sometimes even harder, because it's great.
Have to put effort into it. And if I'm to think about, to make that comparison, because I think you make a really great point, I look at the challenges that we've been through in our marriage. Raising 4 kids is not for the weak, as you know, and so how we are married, and then how we parent, and then our family, but then us as a couple, there's a lot to work out there. And I think it clearly mirrors the challenges we've had at our business. I mentioned a bunch of external forces that have been a challenge along the way. Probably the biggest was COVID, but there were internal forces, hiring people. We own the company equally. So who's in charge? Who's the boss? How do we make final decisions? What if we don't agree? And not just don't agree maybe on hiring somebody or on growing or expanding, but we don't agree on the approach for a client. I mean, that happens. I'll throw out ideas in a meeting and he will not like them 99% of the time. I will throw out an idea. He will not like it. I swear to you, Tatiana, 2 days later, he comes back. He goes, I had a great idea. That sounds exactly like the thing I said 2 days ago that you didn't like. He goes, nope, it's different. I'm like, it's only different because you hear it in your own voice. So, we have those moments because we're humans, and humans are challenging. And so for us, it's been about working through it. And we are in a lot of ways now, 25 years in on the marriage side, we found a good rhythm. I would have loved to have found it at 10 years in. But I really feel like the stress of kids, because all of our kids are off now. One's graduated. I mean, he's got his undergrad, his MBA, and he's actually working for a branding agency in Nashville. And then the next 3 are still in college. We had all 4 in high school at the same time, all 4 in college at the same time. And but so it's more us, and that's a lot easier. I know a lot of people, the kids leave, and so they look at each other and are like, who are you? And do I like you? Luckily we do. And so we're 2 years into we're free birds. They come and go from the nest. The nest isn't completely empty, and it's good.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm like, I don't get those people that are like, it's a God, what am I going to do? I'm like, party. That's what I'm going to do.
Yes. Watch whatever show you want to watch at any time you want to watch it. You know what's crazy? I leave the house. I come back 6 hours later, 12 hours later, 3 days later. Everything's in exactly the same place where I left it.
Oh, wow.
There's
oh
no
God,
new dirty dishes. There's no new dirty clothes. It's all just like it was when I left. It's a gift.
Oh dear. Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I have some time, but yeah. Wonderful. Oh dear. Yeah, got me dreaming there. Let's talk about what did I want to talk about? Right. You did touch on that. You did say when we were talking about the choice of name, brandRUSSO, and you said, and the domain name was valuable. That was important. Yes. What do you feel? And you have the span like of both, like your expertise across the board, and as well the time you spend in the industry. How do you feel? And we've like on my side, like we've heard a lot of things that came and went, and some are still around, that were going to kill the domain names. Like there was going to be, everything is going to be social network. You don't need domain names. They don't matter. Everything is going to be applications on your phone. You don't need domain. It's not going to matter. And we still have domain names and they do matter. What is your experience? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the domain names are always going to matter. Phone numbers don't matter as much. I don't see people calling as much, but domain names matter. They need to be clear. They need to be easy to understand, especially with all of the, spammer, hacker, black hat, all of the negative, bad stuff that's happening. It's more important than ever that you have a very clear, easy to understand domain name. Now, it doesn't have to end in .com. I'm seeing more .cos, .banks, .infos, .orgs. And so that's okay. You've got some options there. But if, for us, there was a Russo, just Russo, not brandRUSSO, russo.com. And it was not used by a competitor. It was used just, it's like a reseller. And so we thought, well, we could go get the russo.co or the russo.info. But I really wanted brand in the name. I wanted people to understand what we do and who we are. And if that had been owned by a competitor, by another agency, it would have been a no-go, non-starter, because you're just going to confuse the customer. When we were maybe 8 years, no, not even 5 years into our business, there was another person with the same last name as us that was a client. And so we did work for them. They had a band. At the time, we did a lot of music marketing and work. Michael was actually a voting member of the Grammys because we did so much. He did so much design work for musicians. So then years later, that person opens an ad agency with a different name. It wasn't called Russo, but their name was Russo. And so there was so much confusion in the marketplace because people didn't know if they were calling the agency where this Russo worked or the agency where that Russo worked. So that's confusing. So you've always got to think through, put yourself in their shoes. The most important thing anybody can do in any business, and do it often, a couple times a year, is put yourself in the shoes of your customer or your client or your patient. What are they going to Google to solve their problem? And what pops up in that search? What are they going to call? And how do they answer? How's the phone answered? What if they send an email? Who's going to get that email? You've got to go through the steps just the way they would. Walk a mile in their shoes and realize what information are they receiving and what could take them off the path of going straight to you.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you on the confusion. And that's been before, and I keep repeating that story when I talk to people, but it is relevant. Before I got into domain names, I had an IT software development agency, and I'm sure that applies to must have it in your line of work as well, where people would come with a great idea, or project, or product, or whatever it is they're doing. To you to, in my case, it was to build software, to build their website. And very quickly, people that are really bright and intelligent and they have the budget and the ideas and the team and everything, very quickly they fall into that hole of you sitting there looking at them and it's all about, I like this, I like that, I like this color, I like that picture, I want to move that there, make that like that. And it's like, it's not about you. And it's so hard to get that across to people. And I think it's really important what you say, that you really have to do that. You really have to remember and put yourself in your clients, in your target audience shoes. I've literally had people reaching out for a domain name, and they're like, "Oh, it's just nice to have. I don't need it, and it really doesn't matter." And then you'd have somebody from their company writing to me and getting their own email room because their domain name is so bad that they cannot get it right, and that's their job. That's their own email. They're not like buying from themselves.
No, it's crazy. We were doing work for a very large business bank a few years ago. And so I'm in the boardroom with all these bank board members. So there were, I don't know, probably 15 or 18 of them. They were all in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They were all white. They were all male. And they wanted a campaign to target new women businesses, because somebody had read an article that was the hot new business trend, right? Women were starting businesses more than before. And so I said, okay, now at this point, I'm in my 30s. I am literally a new businesswoman. I mean, the agency had been around for 6 or 7 years. And, but I was like, I'm the target audience. So, but we went through our process. Razor branding is what we called it. And so we went through razor branding, and we did focus, promise, connection, harmony. We put together a plan. I brought it to them. I was like, this is it. Now, there were some aspects of it I didn't love, but I knew the work was right. We had done the job. We had talked to the target audience. Because it's in a different market. I'm not in that city. So, okay. But we had talked to people in that city. We had talked to women who were starting businesses or had started them a few years before. So we knew this was going to work. Those men told me that I was wrong and that they didn't like it and that they would like this, and this instead. And I was like, okay. So I presented all the rationale and all the reasoning why, this was right. We'd done the focus groups. We'd done the research. We'd had the conversations. This is the right answer. But I don't like it. I'm like, okay. But here's examples. Here's videos of women talking about how powerful this is and how much connected they feel to it and how great it is. But I don't like it. And I was like, okay, so I'm out. I've 3 strikes. I'm out. I've done everything I can to tell you what the right answer is. So at this point, I then get to make a choice. Either I withdraw. Hey, we're not the right agency for you. You don't see things the way I see them. Or, I grit my teeth and I do the work that they want us to do, even though I know it's wrong. And then I'm going to be held responsible for the success or failure of that campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that is classic, where like people hire you because, you do your job well, and then they try and tell you how to do it. I always have that, I don't know, and and I have like really funny scenarios that I love in my head on my own, that where I imagine exactly the same story that you just said, but like in a doctor's room, where you go and the doctor looks at you and examines you and goes, okay, so you need to take this and that. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, how do you see that happening? I think you should cut that arm off because I think so.
Happens all the time. I mean, doctors always are telling people, you need to eat right. You need to exercise more. You need to do this. I don't want to. I'm not going to. It's like, okay, it's your body. It's your health. But you're making choices. These are the ramifications of those choices.
Yep. And I think that's pretty much about all you can do, I guess, is make it as clear as possible. Why do you feel what you feel? Why are you of that opinion? The like job you've done, the research, etc., and what are the consequences if, they go the other way? And then obviously you can make choices for people.
Right.
You mentioned razor branding. I wanted to ask you about that. Tell me a little bit more about that. What is it?
Sure. So it's something that we created and trademarked back in 2005, I think 2008. So it's been a minute, and it's really our approach. We knew we needed a process. We needed to make sure that we had a set process that we followed every time. And so we even wrote a book on it. It's called He Said, She Said Branding. And so it is, it's step by step how we do it. So focus, that's who we're talking to. Their demographics, their psychographics, their personality profiles, their pain points, everything we need to know about who we're focused on. Every company, and I mean every single company that I have ever worked with in my entire career, always thinks their audience is wider than it should be. They always want to, they're worried, scarcity. I need more. No. You will get more if you go more narrow, but that feels opposite to them. So Focus is real important. We got to get focused. Promise is why you. What is it that you do that's different? Well, how are you going to make a change? Why are you the right choice for them? So that's a little bit about competitor analysis, understanding the overlap and the gap in the space. And you need to have a unique differentiator. If you cannot differentiate, you cannot dominate. So what do you do that's different? Humans are a herd species. We're pack animals, just like zebras and antelopes and elephants. And so as a human, we want to blend in for safety because it's in our DNA. It's how we're going to be protected from our adversaries, and so I think about high school a lot. You want to blend in. You don't want to stand out. You want to have somebody sit with at lunch to protect you from the bullies. And so it's very much wired into us. But in business, if we listen to that natural instinct, then we can't be chosen because we're so busy blending in, we can't be seen. So we have to, kind of let go of that human inclination and instead stand out from the pack, be different, be authentic, be real. You can't make it up, but you've got to be different. The third piece, connection, is messaging. If you've ever read Donald Miller's book, Story Brand, that's what we've been saying for years. The fact that he wrote it into a book, I'm very annoyed I didn't think about writing that first. But it's not about you. It's got to be about them. They are their favorite topic. So how can you communicate in their language with their words to them about their challenges? And then you're just the guide with a solution. And then last but not least is harmony. And that's all the places where the messages go so that they're working together in harmony. They're not working against each other. And so that's Razor branding in a nutshell.
So immediately where domain names fit into that, I have to say the last part, the harmony, where everything has to work together. And I think it touches as well on what you mentioned earlier about confusion. And it's, I think like everything is like, as soon as you have something that requires more effort from the customer, it's like, forget it.
Yep, that's exactly it. And it really all comes down to how can you connect, hence the connection for messaging. How can you connect with that target audience? And so when people tell me all the time, oh, okay, I'm going to connect. I'm trying to figure out why my website isn't working. I'm like, well, that's a very tactical approach, and tactics are important. But who does your website need to work for? Well, these people. So really, I want to talk to everybody in construction. I'm like, everybody in construction, general contractors, project managers, electricians, roofers, plumbers, they don't have the same concerns. Those are 5 different groups with 5 different messages. Is it the people who own the company, or the people who review invoices, or the people who are actually working on the job site? 3 very different approaches. So don't tell me everybody. Let's get real narrow, real focused, real specific. Then we can talk about how the message on the website needs to be targeted to that target audience, how you're going to drive people to that website, how you're going to measure it worked or it didn't work, what action you want them to take. There's a lot of work that goes into that. So no, websites don't just work. It's got to have a strategy.
Absolutely. That reminds me another period of my work when I was into the software website building, where it was another very common thing where people would come and have that great idea and like they do the website and then they just sit and wait. Like, it's just gonna work. Like, no, it's not gonna just work. Like I literally seen that happen a few times, and I felt horrible about it because like when people don't want to hear you, they're just not gonna hear you. Where they go like, throwing money at a wonderful website, really good idea, great, visuals and everything. And then it's like, okay, now what are we going to do? Like strategy and marketing. And it's like, no, I just, paid for an office and, got my suit and I'm going to sit down and wait for the phone to ring. I was like, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really all comes down to if you were building a house, would your contractor say, okay, I'm dropping off some materials tomorrow in the yard and we'll start building? Building what? What's it going to look like? How big is it going to be? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? How's it all going to work together? Right? You have to have a plan. And people, for whatever reason, appreciate the need for a blueprint and a materials list and a paint schedule. And, that if you have the plumber come out before it's ready to have the pipes laid, you just wasted some money on a trip. So all those pieces have to fit together just right. So when the painter shows up, when the sheetrocker shows up, when the plumber shows up, when the roofer shows up, there's an order to that system. And sometimes they come, they do a little bit, they leave. The next person comes, then this person comes back. It's a dance. So we see how that works when you're going to build a house or, a skyscraper. How we don't see that the exact same thing needs to work that same way for building your business is beyond me. It's almost like the technology makes it too easy. And so people think, oh, well, I have a computer, I can just do this. Okay, good luck. But so it really is about having a plan. And so to me, having a strategic brand plan means it's strategy. So we're really being strategic about it. We're planning it out. We're researching it. We're doing the work. It's branding. So we're building emotional connections, and it's planning. We're not just winging it. And look, I'm all about, build the plane while we're in the air. Let's go. Let's make it happen. Let's move fast. But I also am smart enough to appreciate that building a plane while in flight, not a great idea. You can't write the recipe book during the dinner rush at the restaurant. How are those two things going to work together? So you write the recipe book, then you're prepared for the dinner rush because everybody knows their job on the line.
Do you know, the funny thing is that like one in a gazillion times, somebody can wing a thing like that and it works. And then everybody points to it and goes, but they did it. Right. It's like, yeah, but they are one in gazillion, like the other gazillion failed.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, it's just like everybody that talks about the overnight success. I'm like, there are no overnight successes. There are years that go into working and failing over here, working and learning over here, working and figuring out over here. And then it leads to this. And then this is successful. Well, this was built on all those years of lessons.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think we can talk forever. Like I'm really having fun with this, but we kind of I don't want to keep you up forever. You can go and enjoy your life because your kids are big now. Last question. I'm not jealous. Last question. Since the beginning of the year, I started that last year. I was like, since the beginning of the year, like, what are you looking forward in 2023? And then I was like, in August, stop asking that. But now I can. Yes. What are you looking forward in 2024?
So, we finished 23 with our 5th straight year of growth. And so that made me very happy. In 24, we're going to continue that. We're always looking to improve and perfect our processes. We are integrating we started last year integrating a lot of AI into our work. And so we're continuing to grow and expand on that. We've got a couple of new hires that we're bringing onto the team. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to have 2 daughters graduate college, one in May and one in December, early. So I'm excited about that. And the one who's graduating in May is getting married. So I'm excited about that. So we've got a lot to be excited for this year.
Wonderful. That's great. So yeah, wonderful. Well, that's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to include all the links on where people can reach out to you in the comments for the podcast. Thank you so much, Jaci. It has been fun.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of Smart Branding Podcast. Feel free to visit smartbranding.com for more information and reach out if you have any suggestions, questions, ideas, or just want to learn more about how a good domain name strategy can help you build a strong and successful brand. See you next time.